Making bone broth from leftover bones is a great way to improve your health. We all get to choose what we put in our mouth. Unfortunately, most people aren't enjoying the robust health that comes from consuming nutrient-dense foods. Most of the bones that make it to people's kitchens go into landfill without even offering their health benefits. Making bone broth is a great way to get the most out of the lives that we take. In this video, I'm going to cover the nutritional benefits of consuming bone broth. At the end, I'm going to cover my simple recipe that I've developed. For 8 months, I consumed a nose-to-tail carnivore diet, including all of the organs. I consumed 1 body of beef and 2 bodies of lamb. So that was a great experiment where I got to really understand what it takes to nourish a human body. Since the beginning of this year, I've integrated tolerated plants and I've been experimenting. It's been a bit of a challenge to find out what works for my physiology. Ultimately, I've been coming back to just doing more of a strict carnivore diet because I find that works so much better for me. But there are some things that I've integrated that have gone well. One of those things is apple cider vinegar, which has been great because it makes making bone broth so much more effective. I make use of all the bones from the animals that I consume. I eat regenerative ruminant animals which make use of the sunlight, the grasses that come from fertile soil, and they convert those grasses into their flesh, into their fat, into their organs, into their connective tissue, their skin, and their bones. So making bone broth is a great way to show respect to the animal, respect to our environment, and most of all, it's a great way to show respect to our own health. Well-made bone broth is packed full of nutrition. So I say well-made because it comes down to the method in which you use to be able to extract those nutrients and minerals from the bones most effectively. Heated collagen forms gelatin. So this is why it's so important to use the right amount of heat to get that gelatinous broth that's gut healing and hydrating. Maintaining a higher level of collagen in the blood is a great way to ward off inflammation and disease. The protein within the body is approximately 30% collagen. So collagen is in your cartilage, ligament, tendons, skin, hair, nails, your blood vessels, even the cornea of your eye. As you age, you produce less of it, so it's very important to keep up the supply as part of an anti-aging protocol. The major amino acids that are within collagen are glycine, proline, and glutamine. Bones are full of a variety of minerals, including calcium, magnesium, iron, copper, manganese, potassium, sodium, zinc. Now these minerals need an acidic medium to pull them from the bones into the broth. Bone broth contains glycosaminoglycans. Now these are the complex carbohydrates that give collagen its elasticity and its hydration. Collagen improves skin elasticity, smoothness, strength, and hydration. This is why collagen has the potential to improve cellulite. Glycine stimulates the production of glutathione, which offers immune benefits. Various immune cells have glycine receptors, which allow for a reduction in oxidation. Proline is an antioxidant, which can scavenge free radicals. The glycine in bone broth aids gluconeogenesis. So this is very important for anyone doing low-carb nutrition because we all need carbohydrates and you need to facilitate the body's own method of producing them if you aren't ingesting them. Glycine balances out methionine. So if you're doing a steak-only carnivore diet, I highly recommend having eggs or liver. The reason being is because if you don't have enough glycine, you'll deplete B6, 12, folate, as well as choline, and liver and eggs are a very rich source of those. Glutamine is the most abundant amino acid within the blood. It is one of the few amino acids that can cross the blood-brain barrier. Intestinal epithelial cells and activated immune cells eagerly consume glutamine for cellular energy. Glutamine is also a precursor to glutathione. Glutamine is consumed by cancer cells for energy. This is one of the reasons why it's so hard to get rid of cancer. They are doing experiments at the moment with glutamine inhibiting drugs for the killing of cancer to starve it out. It is a very challenging thing to do though because you need glutamine for glutathione, and you obviously need it for good health. And you have to pulse it, because if you do it all the time, then you're not going to have the ability to mop up the dead cancer cells. Proline activates mTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin. Now, this is often thought as something that's negative because it's a growth pathway, much like growth hormone or IGF-1. Now, these are very important for good health, and we don't want to stop doing them altogether. We just want to make sure there's a nice balance between anabolic and catabolic activity in the body. So having too much growth all the time is not ideal, but you still need to repair your body, and you need to go out and do work and get things done. So there's always a balance. Proline increases creatine, which we need for explosive energy. Glycine is important for the synthesis of hemoglobin and myoglobin, which transports oxygen through the blood and the muscles. Consuming bone broth gives us the raw materials for structural integrity of the teeth, the skin, the nails, the connective tissue, the gut lining. Now, you'll also need vitamin D from the sun, as well as K2 from the grasses that ruminant animals consume. If you couple that with physical loading of the body, then you'll have that structural integrity. A healthy colon has a single layer of epithelial cells covered with a thick mucus. Now, the epithelial cells are given structural integrity from glutamine, and the mucus is hydrated from consuming gelatin. Now, this mucus contains beneficial bacteria and bad bacteria, but the collagen that is within bone broth feeds this beneficial bacteria. And this is why it's possible to have a carnivore diet that's well constructed and have a healthy microbiome. Repairing and maintaining a healthy gut lining has to be the objective of any immune health protocol. Lipopolysaccharides are a component within the bacterial cell wall. Now, when people consume dairy, they get an increase of these, and these create a robust immune response. So if someone's gut lining isn't healthy, I recommend staying off dairy until it is healthy. Some people do tolerate it quite well once they're healthy enough. The other thing to consider is that when you take out dairy from the diet, because it's a great source of calcium for many people, you need to make up for that. So having bone broth is great. If you make it well, you will get some calcium in the liquid, but predominantly the calcium is going to stay in the bones, and this is why I consume the bones and gnaw on the end of the bones to get that calcium. If you are trying to heal your gut lining, it's very important to take out all processed foods that contain processed grains, seeds, legumes. So vegetable oils are also really bad for the gut lining. So that means not eating out, because most places that you eat out are going to use vegetable oils to cook with. Glycine stimulates HCl, hydrochloric acid, as well as being a major component to bile, which allows us to emulsify fats. So if you are doing a carnivore style diet, you need to make sure you can digest protein and fat very effectively. So having glycine in a diet will allow for that. Glycine has been found to improve sleep in the form of sleep onset and quality, which allows for better mental performance. I use an Oura ring to track my sleep. Now, this is an effective way to figure out if what you're doing is working and improving your sleep. So you can look at your deep sleep, your light sleep, your REM sleep, your heart rate variability, and see if there's an improvement from consuming bone broth. I used a slow cooker to make my bone broth for the last 20 years. So my method was to put frozen bones into the slow cooker that I've collected. I put boiling water in, I put half a cup of apple cider vinegar in, and I would leave the slow cooker on high until that came to a light boil. And then the second it came to the boil, then I'd turn the heat off, and I'd even use an electrical timer to make sure it wouldn't get too hot and stay at that very low simmer. And I'd do that for 24 to 36 hours. And then after I'd finish, I'd pour that liquid out and I'd add salt then. I never add salt when I'm making it, because you get a bit of pull on the minerals out of the bone without the salt being in the liquid. I stopped using that method because of a histamine issue. Switch to using a pressure cooker method. Now, this is very simple. It's actually a lot faster, and it gets a great broth from it as well. So I sear the bones lightly, then I put them into the pressure cooker. I put boiling water in, I bring it to the boil, pop the lid on, turn the heat down, because of the pressure, that heat will get quite high. Now, an important thing is when you're adding apple cider vinegar, you want to get to around a 5.5 for acidity because bones are quite alkaline. So usually that's around half a cup of apple cider vinegar for me, but you want to test it out. If you use too much or too little, or if you're making more or less, you need to make sure that it's acidic to get a better pull. I leave that in there for up to 2 hours, and then I turn that heat off and gradually the pressure will release, and then I pour that out. Now this works really well. It's very fast, very efficient, and very simple. After that, to rinse off the bones to get remaining fat and connective tissue or whatever that's left over, I put water again in and I bring it to the boil, and that's not as strong, and I'll just have that straight away. Whereas the real broth that comes from it, I pour that into stainless steel containers, and I pour it so it's not too deep, so that way when I freeze it, it's easy for me to break it apart, and then I've got chunks of that bone broth that I can use whenever I need to. So I can add it to a dish at the end. I can take it with me to work. I use a stainless steel clean canteen that's insulated, and I can pop that bone broth into there, and then I just chuck that into my kettle to warm it up, or you can even add a little bit of hot water to that, and that makes it very simple as a meal that you can take with you. Also, when you're adding it to the end of a meal, once you finish cooking, you can just throw it into the pan, and it's a great way to make it easier to clean as well. And having that nice, warm, gelatin-rich broth with a meal is great for the gut lining, and you get all those benefits. But it's got to be simple and effective as a lifestyle. The freezing method that I use is very important to keep the histamines down. So if you were doing just a slow cooker method and histamines aren't an issue for you, you can just pour it into a container and leave it in the fridge. It's usually pretty good for a week if you've got a nice fat seal on it, or you might pour half into a container for the fridge and the other half to put in a freezer to defrost after 2 to 3 days. After I've extracted the nutrients for my health, then it's time to give back to the earth. If we're going to debate which way of eating is better for the environment, then we need to make calculations based off a full life cycle analysis. So this means we need to understand how the sun is interacting with the earth, then the hydrological cycle, how all the plants are interacting in that environment. Then you've got all the animals, both domesticated and wild. Then we've got all human activities. So not just agriculture, but we're looking at transport, we're looking at industry, electricity production, including what you're enjoying right now. Also the servers that hold the data as well. So we need to understand all of those things, and then how everything is returned back into a living cycle. Some plastic packaging can be up to 500 years before that returns to a living cycle. A simple fact of the carnivore diet is nutrient density. But because we're not consuming plants, we have smaller stool bulks. So when you don't have those large stools, then you're not having to work so hard to process the nutrition that's going into your body, and it's much more efficient at assimilation. Smaller stools means less pollution for the oceans and our land. We all need to remember that we're not only polluting ourselves when we eat food that's unsuitable for human health, we're also polluting our oceans and soils. We can't separate our choices from the environment. We have to not only think of our consumption, but returning our choices to the earth. Shipping processed packaged food all over the planet is not only bad for us, it's bad for the environment, and it should not be labeled as organic. In my opinion, we need to raise the bar. We need to look at sourcing food locally, and that organic certification and branding should be shifted or should just not have any value. In an effort to do something that's far from perfect, I crush, then I bury the bones to be digested by the soil. I do this to stop vermin or odors, and then after that I can dig it up once the soil's digested it and the microorganisms have taken off any excess from the bones so they have no odor. Then I can add them to composting cycles. If you're like me and you care for humanity's health and the health of our environment, then we all need to start thinking this way. Getting healthy can be a challenging thing, so it's important to focus your mind to keep moving your body. So doing a combination of higher intensity movements as well as long duration movements throughout the day, then regenerating every cell. So you want to get good nutrition, so seeking out farmers doing the right thing by the environment as well as providing high quality produce. and taking that produce, take it home and prepare amazing meals, sit down with your family and enjoy them. This is going to nourish every cell of the body and allow you to have optimal health. So I hope this video helps. See you next time.